call the meeting to order, the Personnel and Policy Committee. Seems like a short agenda, but I think it might be more complicated than it looks. So the first issue on the agenda is the administrator hiring process. I'm surprised that Chris isn't here, but there was a question about us kind of knowing or meeting the people somehow before it gets on the agenda to confirm their appointment. And from what I know from past, and maybe Keith knows more about this than I do, that I think in the early days, at least with Mark Holtzman, when the superintendent kind of made up his mind, he would have the board in to meet the folks. And I mean, it wasn't with the intention of necessarily vetoing the appointment, but I think given the circumstances that you had to work with, I think that some people felt like, oh, gee, we were left out, and the first we knew really of it was the PR material that went out. I think we were copied on that. So I don't know. Is there a will or a desire to kind of formalize some kind of process here, some kind of procedure?
I think there's a procedure. I don't know that it needs
just a procedure.
Yeah, administrative procedure, which the superintendent can have administrative procedures all at once.
Yeah.
But just like, as you mentioned, in the past, both in Sheboygan with Dr. Longo and John Krupa here, and with Mark Holzman, the board never interviewed. The board did not get involved.
I don't think we want to do that.
And even when the superintendent would move principals, Dr. Longo and Sheboygan would do that every year. The principals, come April, would get petrified. Did you hear from George? Did you hear from George? Did you hear from George? Because they want to know where he was going to move them.
Oh.
His philosophy on moving administrators, that if you get bored and comfortable in a building, you're not learning, so you're going to go someplace else and learn something new.
Oh, okay.
His philosophy.
As soon as you get comfortable, you get
But all three of those very powerful and very wise superintendents made the choices, but before it went to the board that night for a personnel report, brought that candidate in, an administrator, not a teacher, a director or an administrator.
Right.
Introduced them to the board. The board said, hi, nice meeting you. Are you, what brought you to Manitowoc? Yada, yada, yada.
Right.
And when he left, there was no vote taken. The board acknowledged by vote in closed session the acceptance of this person by the superintendent. Boom.
I don't know, I think by policy that.
That was it.
There's no policy involving the board. I mean, there's a division of powers here, a division of responsibilities at least. When I first got on the board, I read the WASB, the WASB playbook or whatever it's called, and it said clearly the only person you get to hire, evaluate, or discipline or fire is the one and only superintendent. And that the superintendent, then has the authority, has the okay, under what the procedures are. So to hire the directors and the principals.
Here's what, going back to what you referred to, here's what I brought up to Lee and to Biff. When the appointment, because I mentioned to Lee, he is a superintendent, really could move any of those administrators to that Washington job. And we didn't need the great big press release. It's nice to have the press release because the superintendent has the power to move that. But down at the bottom, it said pending board approval. So that puts a whole new light on things that now saying, if the board didn't like this person, what's Lee going to go back and say, sorry, you don't get the job? So that pending board approval in that literature,
the press release,
put a whole new complex on that position. And he really didn't need to do that. because he can move Laney to Washington, he can move Washington to Wilson, he can move any element at his whim. And that's not our call, that's his call.
Yeah. I've
That
got-
pending board
yeah.
approval made it a whole new, really litigious kind of thing if she really wanted to make it that way. Because he gave her a contract, she's got a contract, she's been moved, and the board's now saying,
Oh, yeah, I thought that was a wonderful appointment. But,
right, I do
you
too.
know, the thing is that I'm not, I guess I'm, you know, I was concerned with the appointments that were made by file, other than you, I think. You're the only
always
one,
say that.
you're the only one we trusted, or, you know, the ones that were the mega guys.
And for
Uh,
the record, I had to reach out and offer the job to him.
Yeah, that's
Oh.
true.
I
Yeah.
offered him the job.
Oh, you offered it. You made a good call, but there were some appointments under that administration that I thought, oh, but they were fully supported by the board, the character of the board being what it was.
and he never brought those positions to the board.
You never,
Just-
right, right.
And that's okay though, right? Or not?
Yeah, I
That's
guess,
sorry,
I guess it
Up to the
is, yeah.
board too.
So,
Yeah, do you want to, Biff, did you want, oh, go
so,
ahead.
yeah, just so, if the superintendent wants to restructure, we have policy that says the board must approve that. We
Yeah, the
also have the
restructure, right,
restructuring, which is why when, you know, I brought that forward, when we were doing our
Right,
restructuring. Also, if we were creating a new position, we would bring that out for approval. So I think what we're talking about here is really just what is this protocol that we're going to essentially work out, get down on paper, and then follow. And one suggestion that one of the board members that I was talking to over the last week or so had was, you know, we may want to get some feedback today and just find out what people are thinking, and then, you know, really look at our new HR person who will come in July to sit down with, you know, some of the thoughts that were brought forth by board members and really help shape what that protocol looks like and bring it forward to the committee in an official recommendation. So like if we're gonna have a conversation today about the do's and don'ts, and kind of the things that I heard pretty strongly was, and to me, this makes complete sense, no press releases until it's board approved, right?
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So that to me is an easy one. We won't do any more press releases until the board is approved. We can have them ready to go, and the day after or the night of a board approval, we can release the press release.
Well,
I
you
think
can-
that'd be
You
okay.
can also tell a press, please do not release until.
Right.
Yeah, that's true too. Yep. Yep.
Because the two press releases that came out, again, were down at the bottom,
Right.
pending board approval, down. at the
Yeah,
bottom,
right,
pending
right,
board
right,
approval.
right, yeah,
So,
yeah.
so you could have had the HR person released from that contract up there, ready to go here, thinking she's got the job or he's got the job, and the board says, no, and then she's sitting there without, which, the article was fine, but it was pre-board approval.
Correct. So we can do that for sure.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, go ahead.
I just had a question, maybe Mike or Mary with your experience. You can't be under contract in two places.
Yeah, that's
So-
right, yeah.
So part of my concern is the board approval. If John Smith takes this job in Manitowoc and resigns and gets a contract here, and then board approval, the board says, no, we don't like the guy.
Then
But we forced him to resign in the other place.
As I said, you're entering into a legal,
Well, I don't think I don't think we're talking about giving the board veto on
Okay,
on
and
hiring.
I just worry about that,
administrators,
some of the discussion from our last meeting
Well,
sounded like we get the last say whether or not, and that, I just don't think that's, should be anywhere.
Just for a point, just a couple points for clarification. We don't issue any contracts until after the board approves. That's when we issue a contract.
Okay,
And then if we issue a contract like for an administrator, it's always July 1st. So the previous district, they're resigning prior to July 1st. So there's no overlapping of
Yeah,
contracts.
Okay,
And there's
so
no
we
getting,
have sorry. to interrupt.
yeah, there's no
we have
getting out in
June.
front of the board relative to a teacher
Right.
contract or an administrator contract, just so, yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
But
that's what I was.
there are going to be times when that person is hung up in limbo
Mhm.
because we haven't called a special meeting or gotten to it. So there is something to that.
Here's a couple of things that I just need a little bit of clarification. We really need to talk about a little bit is such as these situations. And these are very common. These happen pretty much maybe all the time relative to administrator hire. But we have interviewed maybe 2 rounds, a building site round, executive team round. Superintendent says yes, green light's on for X candidate. At that point in time, I contact the candidate. I try to what I call seal the deal, make the offer of employment, Then from there, it's usually a situation of, okay, we have a board meeting on X date. You have a board meeting on Y date. How close and how synchronized are those 2 things? Because if you are resigning and we can't do any sort of communication until here, there's a lot of, we're not such in a closed little community that we're in a bubble, things happen and people go and things happen. So, and then that's one scenario. The other scenario is the board packet, for example, June 10th, next Tuesday, but the board packet goes out Thursday afternoon, late Thursday, let's say, So once that board packet goes out, it's public. And,
Yeah, that's right.
and if we haven't communicated with our staff relative to these situations, then they're going to hear it on the street.
It's a breakdown of trust.
Yeah, and that becomes, so it's just a couple, and it's all about communication, So, I need a little help on those pieces, because I think if we don't communicate with our staff, and our staff starts to hear things on the street, I don't think that bodes well for the superintendent or the directors or the board relative to trust and that type of stuff, so.
Oh, go ahead.
The question I have is, it seemed everything in the order of things, vice the press release, happened in the correct order. So the comment was made at the last meeting that, well, can we get a closed or an open meetings session in the proper channel of time? To me, every 2 weeks is a standing meeting that we mark time aside on our calendar. Did that really come up wrong, other than holding the press release going forward? It seems like everything worked as it should have, except for it would have been nice to have the board approval before the press release. That was it.
So if we have the press release, the community press release, come out after the board meeting's approval, we said Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, whatever.
Yeah.
I think we can do that. I don't see any issue with that.
Great.
Yeah.
Here's what I do think that we need to talk about though, is that, let's just use this Tuesday as the example. And the thing is, about a week from today, that's pretty close. It could be 2 weeks out from today, it could be 3 weeks out from today, depending on meeting stuff. But communicating with our staff, are we comfortable with an email? Are we comfortable with something a little bit more than an email, but just to staff?
Mary?
I feel like we're micromanaging this as a board right now.
Yeah, a little bit.
And I think I'm gonna go back to the point you made. Mike's trying to figure out the process. That's his role as the director. There's a new director coming in less than a month. As Mike hands that torch to Stacy, it's gonna be her job to develop some of that. And as you said, if she'd like
But
some.
she's not doing the hire. You're doing the hire.
Well, yeah, ultimately administrators, come through our team and yes, that hire is on me.
Yeah.
But I.
But the
I just-
process is HR, yeah.
As some of you know, I've worked in 7 school districts.
Yeah, I know.
You don't do this to your HR director. You don't do this to your superintendent. And Lee said it at the board meeting. If I screwed up in a hire, I'm gonna deal with that hire.
Right.
So for us to micromanage this down to when is the,
I don't think we're trying to manage.
I really feel we are, Carrie, and I think we need to let the director of HR, Mike now and Stacy soon, make those decisions, communicate with Lee. I've got the person locked in. Here would be the steps I'm suggesting. The 2 of them agree to that. And then where in that process does the board find out? When does the community find out, the staff? You all need to figure that out. We don't need to micromanage each step of that communication.
There are times when Mr. Swanson would have the same thing. He would just call an emergency board meeting. He'd just work on a quorum. He'd get on the phone, email and say, I need a quorum. We have this person. I have a timeline. They're at risk in their district. We're at risk in our district. We need to go public. Can I have a half-hour emergency board meeting, get a quorum, and away we go?
Well, you can even do that virtually now.
Correct.
15 minutes
Virtually,
and you're
exactly.
done. And I think given the job market, that's going to need to happen.
I do too.
And I know that's possibly 1 or 2 more meetings a month, but given the job market, I think there may be times when Mike and then Stacy in the future says, I need to get this teacher or they're gonna sign in this district. They're a rock star and I need them, and we have to figure out how to help that out.
I think it would not be that difficult to get a quorum of 4 people that are all gonna support
Do it for
this
expulsion
and get it done when we have those crooks, those little crannies that come in there.
Yeah.
So do we have a policy that, say that situation arises and Mike or Stacy or Lee says, hey, I need a Zoom meeting. Do we have a
Yeah.
policy that says we can meet Zoom and
Yep,
vote
it
on
allows
it?
it.
All we have to do is have a
That-
thing for,
I mean, I think that what we were talking about as far as, it's a market now where we have to act to get people. That
Well,
might
we
be
can't
a
hold
way-
good staff in limbo. We can't say, well, we want you, but we need 3 weeks.
Right.
It can't happen. Not if you got somebody out there.
We had a situation just recently, and I won't get too detailed, but where I made the offer on a Tuesday, basically sealed the deal on a Tuesday. And Wednesday night, that person they had a board meeting, that person was resigning. Well, if we don't do some communication or move quickly, Green Bay is not that far away. And people are gonna be like this, and our staff is gonna hear on the street, and
Right.
it's just not a good day.
That's the biggest concern that I have is that, as you saw in our strategic vision, building trust not only with our community, but with our staff. And, and the crux of it is, and you've been doing very good of speaking very generally, but the fact of the matter is you name a week, we have a situation. So we have a building principalship open that we did a second round of interviews for yesterday. Mike sealed the deal. All right, but when that board packet comes out either Thursday night or Friday morning and it's on the personnel report and we haven't told that learning community that they have a new leader yet, that's bad for us. So,
Sure.
when we're talking about press release, that's an easy one. But I would still prefer to be able to communicate with our staff about an administrative change because in my view, they should find out before the public.
Well, and quite likely there were staff on the interview committee
That's correct.
who deserve to know that as well.
Correct.
So, again, I think it's up to HR, and I feel pretty strongly about that.
Yeah.
Develop your cadence, and we have to trust that you're doing that right.
Yeah.
And if not, then that's your job, Lee, to come back to that and clean up the process. I'm not saying that because I think you did anything wrong. I don't. Mike's done a great job, and we've all said that over and over again.
Right.
And that's why you hire directors, to handle those kind of protocols and get people here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So just a follow-on question to the second part we were talking about. So we all get set up in Zoom, we have a policy. We call that quorum, public gets a 24-hour notice, correct? So
Yeah.
And we have to
sets it up-
follow open meetings.
Yeah, open
And that's it, and the website, via the website, I guess I'm learning curve here, so just help me out, just bear with me and say, so they get a 24-hour notice posted where? 3 sites, something like that?
They post in the paper, they post in, on our website, they post,
3 slots.
yeah, there's like
3
3 or 4
spots.
spots.
So we have that 24-hour, you get a quorum at least
Easy.
to go, preferably an odd number of people to be there, and you make it happen.
Mhm.
So we can.
We can totally do that.
And it's publicly broadcast.
And it publicly,
So
Right.
the
the
public
Zoom can be-
could join the Zoom.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you, just wanted the clarification for the learning.
And literally, you're going through that consent agenda or agenda. and
essentially, yeah. Yeah, it's a 5 to 7 minute meeting.
At the
Exactly.
most.
Yeah.
My perception could be wrong, but I don't see a lot of people on the board or anywhere else that are upset about this much. I think I think, you know, when I saw who we got, I thought, oh, yeah, this is moving ahead. So I don't think, I guess my recommendation would be that we take no formal action on this, and when the new HR person comes on, she sits down with the superintendent, and they figure out a thing, and then they inform us. You know, kind of what, you know, what axes are being ground here.
Right.
And I don't think there's any will to try to move in on your authority to make, you know, to hire people you want to hire.
And in my background work, when the concern was raised, I did contact several other school districts, Random Lake, Sheboygan, Mike's got connections in Oshkosh, Beaver Dam, Fond du Lac, Mary from, like, what we tend to do is pretty much the norm. And so, you know, like Sheboygan, for example, you know, they essentially do you know, what we just did, they do exactly the same. But they do press release post board approval. So there's the change.
Yeah.
And that's, everyone was universal in that. So that's an easy one, like, okay, well,
You know,
we learned our lesson there.
if it's at all possible, I'd suggest that the people being appointed be at the confirmation vote.
Yeah, I think,
You know,
and the discussion about meeting, I think that's important. And plus, we want to make a big deal and celebrate when we hire an administrator in this district. And so, you know, as we were just talking this through, you know, let's say the meeting starts at 6, we invite that candidate and their, or hire and their family to come to the meeting. And then we just do a little sidebar, like I could formally introduce the candidate or the hire to each board member, and they could just get a chance to touch base and chat with them. Let's say we do that at 5:50 before a board meeting starts. We could easily do that too.
Sure.
And I think in some cases, if it's an internal hire, that probably wouldn't be necessary.
Sure, if you already know them, yeah.
So that's where, when you make this hard and fast,
Yeah.
that's where an HR director and a superintendent sit down and figure
Right.
this out.
Yeah, this makes the most sense in this
And
case.
then I wouldn't even, and no disrespect for an AP, but
Yeah.
I don't, even getting involved at that, I don't think we need to,
Not at all.
so.
I don't either. I guess my own concern has been, you know, in my kind of brief while on the board, is at the total other end of this, you know, people can make appointments, et cetera, but we've had superintendents who really like keep people in place, stubbornly keep people in place that are real problematic. And I don't know what we do about that. And, you know, there were some under file, but I thought.
But that problem has always been here.
I know
And
it
that's-
is. It probably always will be.
But that's also the duty of the board to evaluate that and say, hey, that, you know, there were people that probably should have been gone at different times that we held on too long because the board didn't take that initiative to go to the superintendent and say, why is this person still here?
Yeah.
What is going on? It didn't show displeasure, so it doesn't change. That's the job of this group of people, the Board of Education. If things aren't good or they see something, then it's time to have a closed session with the super and say, hey, explain what's going on here. These are our concerns. But again, that's us. We have to do that.
Yeah.
I think the one other is, you, as an HR person, you always have that out to rescind an offer. So if a board member came forward with an absolute, oh my gosh, didn't you guys know,
Yeah.
we have to weigh that carefully. Is that a reason why we can rescind? But there's always an escape clause, I guess. So again, I think we have to trust those administrators that we have in place to do that work for us.
And just to piggyback on Mary, I mean, nothing is legal, nothing is official until this board takes action, either way, with their vote. You know, then it becomes, okay,
Should have gone.
they're
We
important.
get a vote because we're the ones that are authorizing the payment of salary. I mean, it's you know, we're like a legislative branch there. and that we approve the money thing.
You approved
But I don't think we-
contract.
Contract, yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, we approve the contract, that's true, but we don't get to approve or disapprove the person.
Well, that was pretty much Kuba and Holzman as well. I'm not asking the board for approval. I'm letting you meet a new administrator that I'm ready to hire and, talk about his family, his friends, and why you come to Manitowoc, chit chat, what do you like for breakfast, da, 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 da. But I'm not asking for the board approval. It was meet the new administrator that I plan on hiring. And it was a social event. It was nice, but nothing in board policy said you had to do that.
Yeah, I find it a little odd that this is coming up now, because I don't think there's anybody on the board, maybe one person on the board, that has any reservations about the people.
Carrie, probably the only reason this has come up again, because I did say that I think you pre-posted the notice, because you said pending board approval.
Yeah,
You posted prior to pending board approval, which put the whole thing in a big consternation. And the notice should go post-board approval. And however we make it, if we make it. But you should say, we've hired somebody, and then just say down at the bottom, pending board approval.
So I believe this discussion in the committee is sufficient to deal with the issue, and it doesn't need to be on the agenda for the next meeting. And is that true? Do we have a consensus on that?
I have no problems with that.
Do we need a vote? I don't think so.
Wasn't it requested, oh, yeah, but don't you have to bring the resolution at
it's
least
only
two
on-
back to?
It's only on here for information and discussion.
No,
No action, just say action.
I don't think we want to make it a big ass.
Alright,
Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, cool. So, speech pathology, which I talked to Mike about, or Mike talked to me, and it's like, it's really, these people are rare and very valuable, and I want Mike to explain what his proposal is.
Well, let me start out with this. It's a district proposal, but it's really coming from our Director of Pupil Services relative to our speech language pathologist. And when you read the memo, this is our many, if not most of our speech language pathologists have the Certificate of Clinical Competence in Speech Language Pathology. The 3 Cs they call it. Yep.
Yeah, right.
And just for the audience a little bit, it's a nationally recognized credential from the American Speech Language and Hearing Association that signifies that speech language pathologist has met the association standards for education, clinical experience, and professional competency. Essentially, it's a mark of excellence and validation for SLPs demonstrating their expertise and adherence to the highest standards in the field. Speech language pathologists are very, very difficult to find, along with a number of other positions, but
Yeah.
they're specialists. They really, truly are. And retaining them is also extremely, extremely important, because when you lose somebody, replacing them is a challenge. And the more we can hire and the more we can retain these people and avoid contracted services for a couple of reasons. One is the flat out expense. But the other one is sometimes the best we can do is virtual. And the more we can bring people on board and on site is what we want to do. So we're recommending that we would provide a stipend of $1,500 to our SLPs annually. And you can see there's a couple of school districts here that offer a stipend. And you can see the amount that they are paying. And I just think
How many people do we have in the category?
10 or 12?
10 or
12?
Well, we have 12, I think, the need for 12, but we have 10 working right now. We've had a hard time filling.
Yeah.
In fact, I don't think we've had a full slate in a year or two, so, it's because it's very difficult to find them.
So what you're saying is that in addition to their salary, the 10 people that we have that are CCCs will also be paid a stipend of $1,500 a year. Boy, that doesn't seem too juicy, but it's something.
Correct me if, years ago, when I was former director of pupil services, you could graduate from the state university in speech and language pathology without your Cs. Then the state changed that in that term, those midterms in there where they mandated Cs for all speech and language pathologists. Is that correct? There's still a mandate for Cs right now? You can be hired under a bachelor or master's, but do you have to go in after your Cs?
I'm gonna go on a limb here a little bit, okay, because this is, Director Eichmann's expertise, but I thought she said we have one of our speech language pathologists, help me out, Lee, that's
have
got a
one-
doctorate degree.
Yeah,
That would surpass the Cs.
yeah,
Right.
she has her doctorate.
Yeah,
That was the only one that doesn't have it.
But she doesn't have the Cs, so therefore I don't think if you're asking Keith whether it's a requirement with their degree, I would have to say I don't think so.
Okay.
But what
I think
is,
it's an additional certification.
Master's
what
program.
is required is that they have to submit, I think, yearly,
That they're
their
staying
additional training and their
Yeah,
hours.
right, that's,
to keep their Cs.
Where there's no other licensed person in our district that has to do something like
It's a tremendously difficult
Program. It's-
program.
Yeah, it
To
is.
even to
Yeah.
become a speech and language pathologist.
Yeah.
Plus this addition of the Cs, which really puts you like, you're the best of the best. And as far as I know, Manitowoc Public, we have never even come close to the student-therapist relationship of the amount of students that we have in SLP programs for therapists. We are always way down, and as most districts, because you can't find speech and language clinicians.
Yeah.
My other question is, do we pay a stipend to school psychs?
That's a very good question, and I asked Katie Eichmann that very
That is a
question
good
because the school psychs also have some sort of
also have,
national
correct.
certification,
Correct.
correct, Katie? And Katie indicated to us in an executive meeting that no, although the school psychs can get that national certification, it is nowhere, and I'll say this, it is not as stringent, it is not as, the work involved to meet that criteria, to get that certification, it's not the same.
Is there a stipend to school psychs then for
No.
extended?
No.
We don't?
No.
Okay,
And, no,
okay.
We may invite that request by doing this from them.
that was my concern, Carrie, when I asked Katie that question, but Katie's response, and it was 2 times, separate times I asked it, because I was concerned about it, but both times Katie assured us that they're not on equal playing field. No,
Okay.
no.
But the psych people are hard to get to.
Okay, yeah.
Well,
That's
Every position.
That's one of the reasons why we're doing social workers, among other things. Although I
Psych
think
is a
doing social
mandatory
workers is
master's.
great.
You can't, it's hard because you go through bachelor's and as a mandatory master's, you become out with school psych.
Yeah.
There's no other choice.
it's actually, if I can interrupt you, Katie, I think it's actually like an ED specialist.
Okay.
It's even beyond that a little bit, yeah, for school psych.
Oh my God.
And, the thing is that, just to give you an example, the market is so tight today. I mean, when we hire good people, we have to figure out how we're gonna retain them. And sometimes just a little bit of this and a little bit of that, a little bit of juice,
Yeah.
I'll just give you one example. English language, ELA, right? Handful of candidates right now for a position at Lincoln High School. We've
Yeah.
already hired a couple of people, but we just had a recent resignation. But that's not uncommon across almost every area, whether you come math, EL, English language, I mean, just name it. Even our elementary positions today, single digits, maybe 10, 12, I mean,
Wow.
2 decades ago, we all know, that was a long time ago, you get 100 plus, it's just a different world, so you have to be, when you get a resignation, you have to be able to move, you have to be able to get on it right away, and then when you get good people, you gotta figure out how you're gonna keep them. I'm serious, that's just the end of that's just what it's all about
It's a
today.
new job market.
It
Yeah.
is,
Yeah, in the old days, you'd say, all right, we post it here, we'll close it here.
Yes.
10 days from now, we'll have an interview. 10 days from then, we'll offer. Now it's like, because if you miss out on it, as soon as you see them come in, you're like, okay, can you come in, maybe tomorrow?
Yeah, right.
And you don't put a deadline out there anymore, it's until unfilled, until filled. You know.
So does somebody want to make a motion that we?
Also move.
Second,
Second, further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. So when I talk to the board, I'm saying, because these people are absolutely needed, hard to find, not always easy to keep, we're gonna try to like
Yeah.
encourage them by being positive.
And really,
In our action.
really put a little emphasis, Carrie, on the mere fact that this is a special certification that, as Keith kind of put it, elevates them to another level, so to speak, of competence,
right.
you know.
For years, teachers had to do additional coursework to maintain a license. That's no longer true. They pay the $125 every 5 years, right, to have their background checked and get their license renewed. But the speech and language folks, they continue to have that high level of certification and all the hours and coursework they have to prove each year to maintain that, and that's unique. And again, I know you brought up school psychs, but they don't have that level of
Well,
yearly.
I know Green Bay offers, I mean, I know Sheboygan offers like a $4,000 stipend or something like that. Does Green Bay offer stipend?
Yes, yes.
Dollar
So,
amount is,
I don't know.
My only question is the stipends, is the stipend enough? I mean, does this work?
That was actually gonna be my comment. In where I work for senior reactor operators, it's 7 times.
Oh, yeah,
you know, Carrie,
I
I
mean, you
think
can't
that's,
do that.
yeah, you can't do that. I
Is
mean, we're
1,500 even enough? Should it be 2?
Yeah.
public schools with a Republican legislature. Remember
Because
that.
it's,
Again, I think Katie, as the director, has made
she made the decision,
Yeah.
understand.
And we
Yep,
need
she
to
made the
support
proposal.
No, but does it
Support
work?
them.
Does it
Makes
work?
sense.
well, you know what, if we find we're
And
not getting it.
do they have,
if we're
do they
losing
have
to
less,
Sheboygan, we have to
less of a
raise it.
problem in Chippewa Falls where they do 25?
She'll probably tell us a year from now whether or not that works, right?
Do they, does it work for Chippewa Falls and Howard's Grove?
Yeah.
You know, if we find we're losing our clinicians to Sheboygan because they pay more, I guess we have to reevaluate and jack the
Yeah,
price up.
maybe up it.
Yeah, sure,
I mean-
sure. Well, let's start.
She
with
can
this.
recommend that.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if we're losing any of our, you know, school psychs, SLPs, OTs, PTs, some of those really specific positions, we have to make some decisions. If we're losing people north and south because of salary,
Oh,
we've
yeah.
got to make some decisions.
Yeah, right.
You know, I had a situation in a different school. I just need to share this with you because this was very interesting. And it involves school psychs. And we had about, I don't know, maybe, say 15 FTEs. And we were down to like 5. We were losing them because we were not compensating them well enough. You know, so I mean, it was like, I got to go to the board and do something because we can't attract them and we can't retain them.
But you've reassured us a number of times that Manitowoc pays pretty well.
We're in the hunt.
We're in the hunt, yeah.
Yep, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, is, ready for the vote? All in favor? Any opposed? No? Okay,
I
so
thought
we'll
we
recommend
voted.
that. Huh?
We voted already.
Oh, we did, we voted already. Oh.
Wait, Gary, it's nice to have a second vote, that's all right.
We reaffirm our support.
You know, I'm planning
So
on.
now we're putting the minutes, it was a 6-0.
That'll really
That's
set.
right.
I like that.
Let's see what that does.
Came out of committee 6-0.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Gosh.
All right. Next issue is board policies for induction. Did anybody have, I looked them all over. Are we including in that the 3rd grade promotion retention policy? That came out separately, I know, from the stuff that
Yeah, it did. And the reason that we were waiting on a recommendation, we were having Heidi check on something, so that's why that's included in this group. And it did
Okay.
make its way into the official document. It's number 12, policy 5411. But yeah, it came out a day or two after the other
Yeah.
one. Because we needed to get it in there. One of the Act 20 requirements is that we address 3rd grade promotion.
Yeah, I know.
And we have to have it done by July, so we're ahead of the game.
Okay,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
all right. I think there's enough flexibility in policy to,
Yeah,
you know, I think every case is a separate case, it seems to
Yep.
me.
Right.
But,
Yep.
so, and I think this policy allows for that. There was something else, job sharing. There was,
Right now, we don't have any job shares for next year. We had one last year and it dissolved, so.
Yeah.
So,
oh,
yeah,
reduction in staff, that's in the handbook as well, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah.
That's primarily when you cut through it's primarily, seniority, isn't it?
It's a factor.
It's a seniority and a need, I guess, yeah.
So,
there,
go ahead.
let me just, there are like, I want to say about 10 different variables relative to reduction in force and layoffs and stuff like that. Everything from, was there previous discipline, was somebody on a plan of improvement, certifications, years of service, different qualifications and credentials, a number of things like that, so. Does years of service have some weight? Absolutely.
Sure.
But is it like prior to Act 10 where it was everything
only
seniority?
thing, right.
Not today.
Well, we did, well, I won't get into the war stories, but I was chair of a committee for the colleges, and we had to come up with this, and there was people were just
Reduction.
furious about it.
Yeah.
That rank was not given more weight, you know, I mean, academics are pretty egocentric, so, you know, they all want to be prima donnas, and so we don't have any of that. The one is, I have a little bit of a question about employee expression of non-institutional settings. Is there if we put this through the First Amendment litmus test at all?
Neola did.
Neola did, okay. Okay. So state clearly that the expression represents personal views. I think that's good. Refrain from expressions that would, and this is a bit vague, I think. The number B is refrain from expressions that would disrupt harmony among coworkers. God, that's a minefield, it seems to me. Is there another way we can say that isn't like disrupt harmony among coworkers? I don't know. I mean, among some coworkers, you know, saying anything can like disrupt harmony. I mean, disrupt harmony is like, oh, well, harmony in itself is a big wish, it seems to me.
Well, I think that might go to procedures for HR, again, back to Mary's points about what is a professional difference of opinion and what's not professional. So disharmony would be, for example, a racial slur. You know, that could be constitute, you know, or a gender slur. To me, somebody said something snide or sexual maybe in nature to me, that could be disharmony. So I think there's a HR catch for some of that in some of your procedures?
Well, I think that first things with stuff like this, if we had a complaint about certain behaviors like you're talking about, Ann, or something like that, some of them are, you know, I'll use it no-brainer type stuff. Other stuff kind of get in the middle where you know, if I'm in HR, I probably call up Macy and say, hey, you know, here's this policy and here's the complaint and what's your take on it, that kind of stuff. Because I don't, you know, obviously Stacy's coming in here, but I don't pretend to be an expert in some of the things that can go on, the behaviors and the issues that get mingled with politics and different ideologies and different stuff, you know. So
I guess I worry about, I mean, there are some people, I mean, in our profession who are perpetual grumps, They just are pains in the ass that, that people, don't want to listen to, et cetera, et cetera. But being a pain in the ass is, is protected by the First Amendment. Right?
Well,
Right?
to the point that it if it's creating some high level of negativity or conflict in a building or things that are taken away from the educational mission, those are types of things that I truly
couldn't
believe we
agree
as a
more.
district
Yeah, you don't want it.
have the obligation and responsibility to address and attempt to change.
I don't know, it seems to me that, wow, it's not a relationship like the foundry superintendent and the guys working on the line. I mean, teachers and everybody else that works for the Manitowoc Public School District, professional people. And I guess, everybody has a personality and I guess a right to expression. I mean, I think really I would personally say, oh, come on, you're disrupting the harmony around here. Shut the hell up, But, whether you can enforce that or not is a separate, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so just as an example, and I think this is probably, speaking of procedures and protocols. So let's just say that this policy was front and center and I was a building principal and I had a complaint of someone disrupting harmony. So the thing that I would do is I would have a conversation with those individuals and I'd find out exactly, okay, well, what is this? Why do you feel that it applies to this policy? And you sort of conduct your investigation. And then you would go to a person with a concern like this, who may be the one being accused of it. And you have a conversation about, okay, you ask them the questions and investigate their point of view on this. And I think in the end, if you come down to the conclusion of your investigation being that, yeah, I mean, it's probable that they're breaking this policy by doing that. What you'd do is you'd say, okay, listen, we got to do this a little differently because based on the investigation, my view is that you're causing disharmony. And so moving forward, this is what the expectation would be. So in other words, you're not going to jump from, hey, you're causing disharmony, you're going to get fired. Right.
Yeah.
You work through concerns with employees sort of in that progressive manner. That's kind of how I would look at it. Like any time as a building principal or any other administrative position is, you conduct your investigation. You do what you can to apply what you believe you learned from that investigation to the policy, and then you render your sort of decision. And then most of the time, it's the first offense, and you go like, "Hey,
Sure.
we can't do that anymore." And then,
I mean, I
8 times out of 10, you don't have it
yeah.
happen again. But one of the things in B though that I think I don't want it to be missed because of this ambiguous disrupt harmony piece is, or interfere with the maintenance of discipline by school
Yeah,
officials.
I think so too. Yeah.
And I think that's quite important. If we had someone sabotaging,
Correct.
a process which was, due process was followed and there was legal outcomes that, we need to follow, I could see where that part of that phrase would
How
enter.
about, well, I was gonna say the other three, I think, yeah. I think we're really on good grounds there. Expressions, clearly the expressions represent personal views.
Yeah.
Second, they can't be defamatory, abusive or defamatory, and you can't lie. And I think that's all not protected by the First Amendment. I mean, somebody ought to tell somebody in government that, but anyway, disrupt harmony, would it be refrain from expressions which interfere with the maintenance of discipline by school officials?
It could be.
I don't know. Go, Keith.
Well, to go along with Lee's scenario, if he is disciplined, the building principal is disciplining a teacher, and I, as another teacher, rally the troops and really go against everything that he's trying to do with that staff. And if I rally the troops to make such a disruptive scene in that building that he's not capable of doing it because of my actions, I think it's exactly what that's saying.
Sure,
That if-
and I think that
if I'm
interferes with the
interfering-
maintenance of
If I'm
discipline,
interfering with the administrator's ability to do their job as a staff member,
Yeah.
and I'm coming unglued and rallying and going public and doing all this Facebook stuff, prohibiting him from doing his job, that's that second part of that
Okay,
statement. That's
I
all
just wanted to have a discussion on that. Does anybody want to?
No, you don't.
Anybody in favor of changing that?
No, you don't.
Are you?
No, I agree with you, but I think A allows some wiggle room to say, I am expressing that as an individual, personal view, and it's not the view of the district,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the bigger piece that this is about.
That's right.
And then once I do start to state in B, my personal view, not the district, once it gets in conflict with what's going on in my
Yeah, right,
business
then
here,
it
my
becomes-
team or so on, that's where I might be
Yeah,
violating our
yeah,
yeah.
policy. So back to Ann's example, I get what she was doing as an example, but that's really not this policy.
Right.
This would be somebody speaking up about, in the first paragraph, it talks about issues of public concern.
Yeah.
So if somebody wanted to make, maybe I shouldn't give examples because I might be calling out something, but if somebody wanted to make something of a more current topic, public concern, and then acting as if that's the district's viewpoint and not saying, no, that's me speaking as an individual. That's sometimes where our employees get themselves in trouble.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Okay,
So, and I believe there's a 3,000 version of this and a 4,000, so it's support staff and professional staff. So everyone under our,
there's a policy that deals with board expressions too.
Yeah.
I thought it was like kind of saccharine in places, but, it's okay. Is there any desire to do anything with this other than just to recommend that it be adopted?
but I think it'll be important, I did say this to Leah already. If it passes at a regular board meeting, that staff become informed of this.
Yeah.
So we talked about that already, and so what we're gonna do in July is we're gonna put out a special publication to staff for any type of policy that is on our books that relate to them and their actions. So we're gonna come up with a way to do that in one document, sort of like a special edition of our Lakeshore Ledger that comes out with those to just say, hey, we know you're not paying attention to board policy month by month and following along. So we wanted to make sure that you were aware that these board policies exist, and if you'd like to look at them in a little more depth, here they are.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I think what I like, because we pay Neil to help us through this.
Yeah.
They have 4 excellent court cases here, so there's
Yeah.
case law to really understand where this is coming from.
Right.
Is there anything on any of the other policies? I smirked when we got to the lactating employees one. And I just, if we turn out, the Republicans on this one, it could be an interesting evening, but I don't think we're saying on the agenda that the lactating employees policy is something that specifically is mentioned, so they may not.
Remind me, Carrie, because this was your committee last time. Where did the board leave this policy when it was such a slugfest?
We tabled it, yeah, we tabled it.
We tabled it because we were having 45-minute discussions. And
That were silly.
So
it was just-
what was in this what was the
Same.
point of consternation, or why did it get
lactating
tabled?
employees, they wanted it to be,
Mothers.
Nursing mothers, yeah.
So now we're going
Nursing
back to
mothers.
employees.
well, yeah.
Well, it's
So that
more,
follows the-
more broad, lactating employees.
I know, but
more broad.
again, enlighten me, the objection was they wanted everything to say, the previous committee wanted everything to say mothers.
Right.
Now we're going back to the Neola of lactating.
Yeah, because some people just, express milk. Some people sell milk. I mean, they don't necessarily.
There are women who go through a
I
process.
know, I get that, but what was, what are
And
we
then
going
the
back
mother-
to?
We're
We're going
going,
back to what Neola
Neola record.
wants.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
it aligns with the law.
okay,
Federal.
Yes,
Federal law,
correct.
correct.
okay.
That's all I listened to it, I want to know what we're going back to. This is Neola's federal law.
It's a broader
Okay.
term,
Fine,
more inclusive of.
okay?
Mothers who choose to.
Yeah, and we want them to
Could
have
be a
the
mother and choose to
environment in
chair.
which they can.
Absolutely.
Exactly. That I think
Absolutely.
is why it was stated the way it was.
Yeah.
Not for,
Other
I don't think
reasons.
they go into the wrong bathrooms on this, so. I don't know, I couldn't figure out quite why they were so upset, but Sue Lynn Moore was here and she was beating the table. So anyway, okay, everybody in favor of recommending the approval of these?
So these are gonna go under consent agenda?
Yeah,
Okay.
okay,
I think.
and
I make a motion to bring these under consent
Hey.
agenda.
Can I ask one question before we do that? I know, unless I.
Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
The AI one,
The what?
the AI policy.
Yeah.
Does it have enough meat?
What is that?
Artificial intelligence.
Oh, yeah, the artificial intelligence. It
75/40.
just scares me too much. didn't-
I suspect as this gets more incorporated into schools.
Correct.
Neola's gonna continue to push out.
Updates.
I think it's a
I
good.
think so too. yeah.
A good
A reasonable
initiative.
start.
Where it starts is it allows it now, what it's really doing in this initial goal, is it's trying to connect other policies within Neola to this issue in a central way to let them, like, it's probably telling us what the answer key will be, which I think is what Mary's saying, which is all of these other policies that we have as a district will have in some way overlap with this AI policy. And therefore, we're referencing them here, so you kind of have a heads up of what's probably coming.
Right.
That was my
I see it now,
interpretation
like
of
the
this.
non-discrimination one that you were
Yeah.
teaching me about that.
Correct.
Okay, so it's got a lot of other stuff that you can't do or.
Correct.
We didn't get
At this point.
the cell phone policy, did we?
No?
Yeah,
But it's
It's
gone
on.
out, isn't it gone out? Somebody at the Y was telling.
Oh, well,
I'm glad to see they're gonna,
we communicated to our students and families that this is likely coming their way
oh,
for next
likely
school year.
coming.
Yeah,
Because there were people who were rejoicing about that.
yeah.
And,
I haven't gotten too many
I don't know.
calls
I
to
don't know
the
if that's
contrary on that
absolutely
one.
policy.
Yeah,
There's
that's
been-
generally been my feedback.
May I ask what number that is? Is that on this one?
18.
No, it isn't.
Number
Yeah, it
18,
is on
thank
here,
you.
number 18.
Thank you.
And it doesn't have a number because
The
that's
cell
not a
phone thing?
Neola policy, that is our own policy. Neola doesn't have one created yet, so this is a copyright MPSD policy, which we did take from the state model,
Yep.
DPI model.
DPI
The
model.
DPI model,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
in relationship to that, I just wanted to make sure that schools had a live voice answering calls, because I just remember when we worked, parents would go, my son has to have a cell phone so I can contact him for a doctor appointment or change a time or something like that. So we really have to make sure that there's some live voice answering a phone and it's not going to message, so parents get upset about that.
Yep.
So
We got
there's
1
that,
minute.
but
2
just-
minutes, we got 2 minutes. I've sort of got a reputation for dragging meetings out, but, anyway, is there a motion to adjourn?
I think we have to vote on
Yeah.
the policies.
I have a
Keith
motion.
made
I guess we do, don't we?
I have a motion to send it to consent agenda.
Second.
Yeah, okay, all right. Any
Yeah.
discussion?
No.
I'll only take one vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
3-0.
3-0.
6-0?
The other one was 6-0, that's all.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All right,
So move.
all in favor?
Yes.
All right, thanks. Oh, we did